So I I actually wasn't going to come on live today because this is a lot later than I normally come on, but I feel really called to because I'm doing this process myself and and I actually don't know how to like succinctly like jump into this to explain this, but when I started reading the Fifth Hub section, I think it was yesterday, and I didn't believe it. I was like, I don't think this is going to work for me. And I thought, this is, I was thinking, this is too far off for me. And, I thought, I'm not going to be able to find the words for this. It's been a year. I was thinking, it's been a year and it's going to be weird because it's like, I'm just going to kind of keep reading this and doing this process and just kind of watching what's happening. And, it's like, one of the other things I think that's interesting is especially with the ascending path, clearing that out and doing the practices, like, even just spending time in, I guess, what I'll call, like, meditation, but, like, I guess, just to explain it, it's like dropping into physical sensation and the expansiveness of that, and spending a lot of time in that without thought, really, or that thought is actually more accurately, it's like sort of running concurrently, but it's not running the show. It's kind of like, even like one of the things is like I can like watch it, or I will I'll like watch something on my phone or on my TV, and then I'll drop into a state where it's almost like my mind is occupied enough, and then I can like actually like sense into myself and just like spend a lot of time just sort of experiencing and exploring in that. Um, so granted, I understand that might be a little much for for our intents and purposes here, but anyway, but what I wanted to say was just that there's kind of a passiveness to this process that by inviting it in, it just starts to work on you. And the idea that it's like it's interesting because it's like I spend, I've like, sort of spun a couple yarns on this about just this very nature, but it just keeps unfolding in a way that's like, whoa, it's not even that it's like a disbelief. It's like an unfolding of deeper layers of something revealing itself and just being like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Um, and just the realizing that kind of like the showing up with the intent, the showing up with the curiosity, showing up with the interest consistently in earnest, it just does it kind of like passively works through. It's making the space, it's actually creating higher energy is to the extent that's possible. Um, one of the things is, like I'll say there's practical stuff too that happens, which is it's not just sort of like there's a bridge into the practical world, which was I was thinking I was kind of like, okay, like like really, focusing on activating more energy. And I just kind of got a very like insistent thought about like consuming more iron, and that, so there's this kind of like crossover, which is like it's like, in this kind of like this balance between this like sort of amorphous, etheric, sort of experiential thing, and then just sort of like the practical application about how it lands. And so, and it can be just a lot of clarity about like a step forward, which is, it's like the idea that it's like your mind could cure it. It's like there's that story of I think it's like a man who's like stuck on an like abandoned on an island, and he's praying to God to come and save him. Like, he's on a abandoned island and he's starving to death and he's dehydrating and in the sun, and he's praying to God to come help him. And first comes a, a one rescue mission by land, or I mean by sea, and then, like a helicopter comes and he keeps waving them away because of his faith in God. As he's like, nope, God is going to come save me. I've been praying to God, and my faith is unwavering. I believe that God will come and and rescue me. And then, he's on his, sort of his final breaths. He's dying. He's like actually about to die on the island. And he says to God, God, why did you never come and save me? And, God's answer back is like, I sent a boat and a helicopter. Like, boom. But it's kind of like there's that to this. Like it's like the being overly attached to one aspect of creation where it's like it's all in this kind of etheric magical plane. There's this place where it just connects to the physical reality, which is actually where we're trying to take it. So, part of the thing is just being able to be comfortable. So I guess the thing I want to talk about is that and actually now this is just more of like a live journal of documenting my process while I'm reading this and doing it, is that I had really been thinking, as I was reading that yesterday, and honestly, like very like taken by the passage, that it was like, this is really compelling. And it was, a lot of this is like reading it for the first time. Like it just sort of retakes me in because it actually speaks to like multiple layers. Like it's like, and in a ascending or even in this like descending pathway, it's like this works on this is like this could, like at all levels, because it actually illuminates kind of what like the next level. It actually like it applies, at least as far as I've gone so far. So anyway, so I was reading it, and then yesterday I went for a short walk, and as I was walking down it was like the Commonwealth Mall in Boston. If you've been around here in the winter, they light all the trees. Really beautiful. It's really cold. I'd put something on my skin and it was like turning red, like with irritation with the cold, and I was walking. And all of a sudden I had this like clarity about updating the website. And the website has been something that I've been kind of like, well, it's just going to kind of do its thing. This isn't really a commercial, like just I've had this thing and I just haven't felt energy for it. It's just I've even like opened it and seen a couple issues and been like, yeah, it's functional enough. And it was like all of a sudden the kite started sort of pulling, that the energetic feeling of being like, I know what to write now. I know what to say. And so, and I was like, well, when you get home, do it. And I kind of like was like didn't, I forget what happened when I got home. I think I was like kind of hung out with my cat or whatever. But this morning I woke up and the activation was still so there. And so I went into the website, which was something, it just I'd had this like kind of resistance to even doing work in it. It felt really logy and hard. Like it just was like, ugh, and even just solving problems was really like, it just was like onerous. Like if there was something, I just didn't have that kind of like that activation, which gives you that extra juice to just solve things. Like it's just been like, yeah, it's all right. It's like, whatever. It's good. It's a good website. It's really beautiful. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate, Marinka, the woman who helped, who like really like did the work on this. And like, it was a really like that process was really, the process of it, the actual process of it had been just so satisfying. But look, the thing is when at that point in time, the marketing aspect of what this is was not in alignment yet, because I wasn't in alignment. I wasn't authentic, or I was like enough out of my alignment with my authenticity and my integrity that it just wasn't working, like how I was putting this out. And it just like had this quality that it just was like, this isn't the right thing, but I didn't know what the right thing was. And then turns out I spend a year doing TPM, doing it here, and like it kind of breaks through. So, I think it had been like before the opening on the website had been transform everything, and it had been like joy, purpose, and possibility for the real world. which was something I'd changed. I had changed that. That had been one change, but I knew exactly what it was, which is now the tagline is revolutionary transformation for your awakening. And I don't think I'd had the kind of like intestinal fortitude to put this forward for what this really is. I have been tiptoeing around the fact that this is a guidebook for awakening. I thought, "Oh, who's gonna want that?" Like, how would I ever, like, there was just a whole thing that's like, how am I ever gonna convince anybody? And I think the reality is, like, it's not my job to convince anybody. I need to just put this forward in the way that really represents how like, feels integral. It feels in integrity, but I wasn't in integrity with this enough to, like, be able to, um was like, it's transmit it. Like, I couldn't transmit that because my alignment was, like, still in need of the process that I went through this year. So, if going through the entire website now, it's like at first I thought, "Well, that's the one thing I'll do." And then I started it just started naturally happening where I was, like, changing copy and making it, and I'm gonna keep, I think, conceivably keep working on this, but, like, really tuning this so it's actually aligned with, like, who this connects with. Because here's another thing about messaging, and finding the words, is that, I'd had this idea that I want, that this notion that parinama could be kind of a broad appeal type of thing. My hope, like, kind of the idea that it was like, look, I see all these people in my work, in my life that are, um like, kinda that just, sort of talk about this stuff, that want this stuff, and they're all distributed, blah, 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 and, even in the beginning, like, when I was getting requests to do, like, big corporate things, and at first I thought, "This is very exciting. This is a place for, to be able to, potentially, like, create change." And no, and it became pretty obvious just by following, this is something that's, like, one of the first videos, which is, like, how to tell whether something is right, which is, like, the energetic quality it has, whether it's difficult or easy, like, that it's activating. Like, it gives you energy, it doesn't drain you. Like, the fact that even if it's hard and it sucks and it feels like shit, that it's like there's still this quality of wanting to do it, and that there's energy available for it. That and then the other thing is, like, do you feel clear or do you feel confused? And so it's like that energy and that clarity, and it's like, and when you when you click into it. So, I mean, you've been there before, right? So I think, the my journey over the or my whatever, my process over this last year has been a lot of, like, shedding notions of what I'm supposed to be, and even my understanding of how the world is operating. I'd protected myself from a lot of ideas just so that, that I could kind of, like, operate in a world that I was ill suited for. And so, anyway, I'm just gonna read this. I guess probably, like, a message that could have taken less than 14 minutes would be to say, if this feels like something where you're like, "Yeah, I don't know," it's like, I'm having the same thing, but it's still working. It's still working. Yeah, it's wild because I'd been really like, "Yeah, I guess I'm just gonna have to kinda, like, keep on trucking and just see what happens," and now it's like, whatever. So, okay, here, so this session is an exercise. So, if you're following along in the book, page 295, telling your story. So, and this is about words. There, like, finding communication and the ability to connect with other people, and also, like, test for how things resonate with the world around you, and even fine tune your vision through to a certain extent. So, all right, enough talking. I'm just going to read this. There's a number of exercises in here, so I'm probably going to do one close to every day this week. So, the header is telling your story. So your project is tied to your personal story. And as you undertake this process, the importance and relevance of past life of events will become increasingly clear. Your story is the only one you can tell with ultimate authority. And because authenticity rings like a bell, you build trust with folks when you tell it. Here, 5 steps for finding and telling your story. Shit. Okay. I didn't read this ahead of time, by the way. So, step 1, think of the emotionally resonant events of your life that make this project important. Some of the groundwork for this was done in the 6th hub in the last practice with like tracking patterns. So, tell this story, keep telling it. Try different approaches and notice and listen to how people respond to them. The prospect of hearing feedback can be scary and can unknowingly, non-verbally signal that you're not ready for it. So people hold back valuable insights. I provide a journaling exercise below for preparing and exploring feedback. So stay tuned on that one. But this is really like, so for me, this step of like thinking of the events of your life that really step forward, and sometimes this can be challenging, so this is an exercise that really connect you to the creation, to what you're building. Like, what prompted the question that you asked? Like, why did you ask that question? What was the angst that you were solving for? So in the beginning of this, it's like, okay, the only thing you need is angst to do this creation. It's like, what is that? What is that feeling? What is that feeling of like needing to change something, needing to create something, something being off? Like the more sincere we can be with that, the more earnest, the more detailed, and the more knowing, um, the more this actually like transmits a specific type of energy and frequency. Yeah, let's see, is there more to say on that? Yeah, no, I'm not gonna. So anyway, step 2, keep refining through feedback. Pay attention to what feels energizing and the words and phrases folks repeat back to you. Do you see people lose interest at certain points? And what are the clarifying questions they ask? Focus on what's enlivening and divest from what bores and or confuses people. This story is yours, but it isn't only about you. It's about how your experience connects with others. So one thing too here is to really pay attention when you start to like kind of like doze off with what you're talking about or doing. Like you notice it. Like it's kind of like, you're like blah 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 and you kind of like are on autopilot. There's just sort of a like discharging feeling versus like really being present. The things that keep you very present when you're talking about them. Like that activation is very like present moment activation. So, step 3, using your story, develop an elevator pitch through the framework below. Take the most potent notes from your narrative and create a pitch that intrigues and piques interest. Its purpose is not to educate, but to generate engagement. Think of it as a provocation to generate questions and increased attention. And then step 4, build your confidence with practice. Broadcast your vision to increasingly larger audiences. Step 5, the most authentic, inspiring, and emotionally evocative your story is, or the more authentic, inspiring, and emotionally evocative your story is, the more the right people will want to get involved. This is actually something I can say that was very much related to my process with this, like very meta, what we're talking about here, is that I was trying to connect with people that really like for the intensity and the challenge that this work presents, that I was really connecting with the wrong folks who were not intent and like really the urge for awakening and the urge for like elevation and evolution, and the amount of actual concentration and intent and desire that is required to actually to undertake a process like this, and to be able to withstand the yeah, like the considerable reconfiguration that will happen in your life. I think one of the things that I would tell people, and this was a very early realizing, like, no, realize no, was I'm like, yeah, this is like, you can just do this. I'd be really encouraging to people that were like scared. People would start reading the book and have very strong emotional responses that would just spit them right back out. And I'd be like, well, you just keep going. And the answer is like sort of like, you know, I'm not the person who decides, but I'm also not the person who should be encouraging people to do things that I don't know whether they have the fortitude to continue on for. This isn't the airport book. I kind of originally sort of thought like maybe it could be, and maybe there's a version of this that does exist that is kind of like diluted to the point that it has its most important points that are just laid out. Specifically the things that have to do with like shedding the notions of fear and shame and unworthiness and the process of that. I mean, that alone is like a whole thing. But anyway, I mean, I'm just I'm just talking. Um, So I'm going to reread this. Step 5. The more authentic, inspiring, and emotionally evocative your story is, the more the right people will want to get involved. This is not a popularity contest. You don't need everyone to like what you're doing. In fact, clarity will both repel and draw people in. And if you stay on the fence about your project, ooh, so will everyone else. I did. I did. Here it is. Ooh, ooh. This is wow. Try to capture the believers in a way that they can be called on when your project comes to life. Get it out there and enroll your allies by collecting email addresses on a list for future updates, or choose a social media platform for creating an audience. So, ooh. Yeah, I'm going to speak specifically to Mira. Like one of the things was that I was working with people, um, and it's like the alignment, it's like, it was just such it's nothing against them. It's just that it's like, so, okay, I wanna put this so it's like, I'm clear about this without sounding like I'm saying, like, there's good people and bad people kind of thing here. There's alignment, and there's stuff, there's like, I don't even wouldn't even call it, I would just call it like not alignment. I wouldn't call it misalignment. It's like when you have to like keep working to keep something on the tracks, but when it's like the right size, it just sort of naturally continues on the tracks, and its own locomotion is spent in its like propulsion, rather than like it's that all the energy sort of like keep it in the place where it doesn't actually fit. And so I think there was a lot about my own self. I know there was a lot in my own parinama process, that the cycle that I went through in this past year, that revealed and shed the adaptations that had me kind of like wanting to fit in in places that I don't fit in, where I have to kind of contort myself. And, I think that, it's in places where I'm, oftentimes considered a leader, but it's a leader as long as I'm behaving and communicating and putting like a really considerable amount of effort into making sure that I don't distress people by, and I still do, doesn't that has never, but like that Yeah, like this thing where I'm just, like, too potent, where I get that feedback that's like, "It's too intense, it's too potent," and, and keeping on trying to, like, squeeze myself in, and then feeling really weird that it's like, "Why am I in these smaller rooms?" As a metaphor. It's like, "Why am I in this small room?" It's like, it's like this dissonance. So, the ascending practice and Parinama method revealed this and shed this and brought me into higher integrity. That this process is like it's almost like kind of like I'm almost gonna say like wax on, wax off. It's like I don't know if that's the right thing, but it's like the process of ascending into like sort of self-actualization. This is kind of like brushing from the opposite direction to get out, like, it like, continues the process of transformation, but ultimately leads to, like, a concrete creation of something. And full disclosure, I have every intent in going back and doing another cycle in this, so I'll be I can I yeah, I mean, I think I might do things a little bit differently. It's very likely that I will do things differently, especially in the process that we're in right now. Um, something, I suspect something will be revealed to me about how to continue this, but I really see the value of how this is circular, as I've discussed before, that the Parinama method is circular. Even the book, which wasn't even consciously created this way, that just actually like flowed through me, has this quality that it ends at the beginning, that like loops in. It's kind of like, yeah. So anyhow, that's it for today. And the next section, so these are all tied together. The journaling exercise for preparing for and exploring feedback. Um, this is how, with the exercise that we just did, and once again, it's on page 295 of the book. This is how, a lot of the things that are sprinkled throughout this process are about how to deal with like, what's the word for it? Like thoughts that come in that are, like kind of the voices of adaptations, which are like, why you? Or even like being, like the thing about people criticism here, that we're preparing ourselves to be able to really exist in the presence of criticism without being overwhelmed by it, and even demoralized or taken made, sort of, what's the word for it? Like when it sort of takes the wind out of your sails or whatever. But anyhow, I'm feeling great. I've got to say, I haven't felt this enlivened and like reinvigorated with purpose, as I'm beginning to see where this belongs and how this exists in the world to support things that are very evocative and resonant and important, to me, and hopefully to you too. So I'm sending you a lot of love and appreciation. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. And if you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to pop them in here. Mira, back in action, with comments. I love it. I love it. It feels really good to see interaction. It means a lot to me. And admittedly, these videos are kind of like meandering and kind of can be, yeah, I imagine, they're not edited, especially as like an appetite for like really tight content is kind of like gets developed. It's probably get kind of frustrating. Some of them I'm super, kind of whatever the opposite of concise is. Whatever that is. But anyway, I just want to say that I appreciate you. There's like 300 plus videos now of, of this nature. And I'm so grateful for this process. I'm so grateful for this TPM experience that I've had within this. And it's so much bigger than me. as I'm experiencing it as something that's happening to me and is transforming me. And if this is the thing that calls to you that's right for you, I am so with you. Yeah, we're in this together. Sending you lots of love. I'll see you next time. Bye.